In this video, I will go through lesson U1A06E, which I will be proving lines parallel. So all the lessons leading up to this lesson, we've been given lines that are parallel, and as a result of that, certain conclusions can be made with the angles that are formed between the parallel lines cut by a transversal. So in this case, though, I want to point out something, and that is the logical statement that is made when we are trying to make certain conclusions about those angles. So again, the premise is that we are starting off with two lines that are parallel, then based on the diagrams that are shown now, we can then conclude that those corresponding angles, angle A and angle A, and angle B and angle B, are going to be congruent. This is the logical statement. We have a set of givens. So if we have a pair of parallel lines, then the conclusion is the angles formed between the transversal and the parallel lines, those corresponding angles are going to be congruent. Now, we're going to utilize this understanding to prove that the lines that are shown are going to be parallel. And to do this, we're going to reverse the order of this logical statement. We are going to state what appears to be the conclusion in the beginning, and we are going to have what we started off with as our conclusion instead. So what do I mean by this? This is the reversal. So the converse of a logical statement is the reverse of the order of the statement. So we're flipping the order here. So we're going to say that if corresponding angles are congruent, then lines are going to be parallel. So again, if corresponding angles are congruent, then the two lines are going to be parallel. Okay, so we can actually apply this converse idea to all the different angle relationships that we've established in previous lessons. So we can actually say corresponding angles are congruent, converse, and what that will imply is if you're given a set of corresponding angles and they're congruent, then we can deem the lines are parallel. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary, converse. So again, if you know that the consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then we can conclude the lines are parallel. Notice that for all of these angle relationships, the conclusion is that the lines are parallel. So alternate exterior angles are congruent, converse. Again, understanding that the alternate exterior angles are congruent, then we can conclude that the lines are parallel. Alternate interior angles are congruent, converse, then we can conclude that the lines are parallel. One more time, consecutive exterior angles are supplementary, converse. So one more time, if we know that the consecutive exterior angles are supplementary, we can conclude, once again, that the lines that we're dealing with are parallel. So let's try to apply some of these ideas. Again, I'm not going to jump into a formal proof, but let's just try to get a hang of those of this idea. So based on the statements provided right now, we're going to assume that all of these statements are true. What kinds of conclusions can you draw as a result of this? Right? Pause the video to see if you can make any conclusions here. So hopefully you guys had some time to think about this. Let's take a look. So I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and I know that angle 1 and 2 are linear pairs. If linear pairs are supplementary and the two linear pairs are congruent, then the conclusion that we can draw is angle 1 and angle 2 are going to be right angles. That is a natural conclusion that I can draw. If angle 2 and angle 10 are congruent, so angle 2 and angle 10 are congruent, I understand that those are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles formed by which pair of lines and which transversal? It's formed by the pair of lines L and M cut by transversal P. I can then conclude that line L and line M are parallel, and that is because corresponding angles are congruent, converse. Angle 8 and angle 4. Angle 8 and angle 4. Those are alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles to which pair of lines? lines P and Q. So I can conclude line P and line Q are parallel because alternate exterior angles converse. 6 and 11 are supplementary. Angle 6, which is this guy right here, and angle 11, those two angles are supplementary. Those are consecutive interior angles to lines L and M. So once again, I can conclude that L and M are parallel because consecutive interior angles are supplementary converse. What about 6 and congruent to 14? So 6 to 14, those are once again corresponding angles to lines L and M cut by transversal Q. So I can conclude one more time, L parallel to M because of corresponding angles congruent converse. 9 and 8, 9 is congruent to 8. So 9 being congruent to 8 isn't any of those logical statements or theorems that we had used before, right? So nothing was said about consecutive interior angles being congruent. However, consecutive interior angles being supplementary was a thing, but not about the two consecutive interior angles being congruent to one another. So actually, this is going to be inconclusive. There's no there's no conclusion that we can draw from this, and it's a little deceiving. I have to say, angle 9 and 8, they do look like they're congruent, and then therefore line L and line M therefore appear to be parallel. But suppose I draw a line appearing in this manner, where again I have 9 and 8, right? And this is an exaggerated version of the situation that's presented right now, but this is illustrating once again that even though we have angles 9 and angle 8, they appear to be opened in the same kind of manner to the same degree, right? Lines L and line M are not parallel as a result of this. They don't appear to be parallel. So again, it's inconclusive. All right, what about angle 4 congruent to angle 6? Angle 4 congruent to angle 6. Well, those are vertical angles. So because of their vertical angles, nothing can be said about the all the other lines being parallel to one another. So again, no concluding statements can be made as a result of this. What about angle 4 and 14? 4 and 14. 4 and 14. Those are alternate exterior angles to lines L and M. So one more time, L is going to be parallel to M because of alternate exterior angles congruent converse. Angle 1 and angle 4 are supplementary. Those are consecutive exterior angles to lines P and Q. So therefore I can conclude that P and Q are going to be parallel once again because of consecutive exterior angles are supplementary converse. All right, let's get to an actual proof now that we've got the hang of applying these converse ideas. Let's take a look at an actual proof. So pause the video for a moment and draw the diagram for yourself, write down the set of givens, label the diagram, and attempt the proof on your own, and then press play again. So hopefully you guys had some time to think about this. Let's label the diagram now. I have A plus B is 180 degrees. Angle A is congruent to angle D, so these angles are congruent. And if I know that A and B are supplementary and they're consecutive interior angles, so therefore I can say line 4 and line 2 are going to be parallel as a result of that. This is just a conclusion that I can draw. And actually, you know what? I am going to put that in red to indicate that that is a conclusion that's drawn after understanding the givens. And the proof here says to show that lines 2 and 4 are parallel. I mean, I've just articulated that, right? How do we show that lines 1 and 3 are parallel? Well, since we know that angle since we know that A and B are consecutive interior angles, and they add up to 180, and I know that A and D are congruent, therefore I can perform a substitution and say B plus D is equal to 180. And B and D, being that they are consecutive interior angles, by the same reason, we can then conclude that lines 1 and line 3 are also parallel. And because line 2 and 4 are already parallel, which we had proven, we can then conclude that C and D are going to be consecutive interior angles, and they are supplementary. And since supplements of congruent angles are congruent, we can then conclude that B and C are also going to be congruent. But again, let's just go through and put this out on paper. If what I've said was a little too fast, you're always welcome to rewind and rewatch. So line 2 and 4 is parallel just simply from line 1, right? And that is because consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Converse. The next thing that I can conclude is that I can say D and B are going to be supplementary. And why is that? Well, that's because I'm performing a substitution. I am substituting line 2 into line 1. And as a result of this, being B and D are supplementary, and they are consecutive interior angles, therefore I can conclude that line 1 and line 3 are going to be parallel. And what's the reason one more time? Well, that's because of consecutive interior angles are supplementary converse. Is it necessary for us to prove things in the order in which they're stated? It is not. So you can prove your statements in whichever order you'd like, as long as it follows a sequence, a logical sequence. So now that I've proven the two lines parallel, the next logical statement that I can say is C and D are supplementary. And why is C and D supplementary? Well, that's because of consecutive interior angles are supplementary, not converse, okay? Because we know that lines 2 and 4 are parallel from line 3, right? We've made that conclusion from in line 3. We can again say consecutive interior angles are supplementary. This is because of line 3. And then, as a result of this, if you notice, and I'm going to use a highlighter now, I have C and D is equal to 180. And then I have D plus B is equal to 180. And since D is congruent to D, right, we can then conclude, D is congruent to D because of reflexive. We can then conclude that angle B and angle C, one more time, right, these are supplementary. And angle D is congruent to itself. So therefore, supplements of congruent angles are going to be congruent. So we can conclude that B and C are also going to be congruent. Supplements of congruent angles are congruent. 5, 7, and 8.